Hi, I'm Linda Fox in the Phocuswire studio. I'm with Timothy O'Neill Dunn, T2 Impact. I am also with Aaron Gowell, SilverRail Technologies, and the wonderful Lorraine Sileo of Phocuswright Research. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Great.
Let's start with the kind of geopolitical, economical, global conflict, everything. Tim, you're normally a doomsayer. What do you think is going to happen in 2025?
How long do we have? Oh, okay. I think the biggest challenge that will exist as far as travel is concerned from the geopolitical situation is the divergence between Europe and the USA. This is going to dominate a lot of what happens because the USA is headed towards deregulation and self-regulation of technology, and Europe is headed much more closely towards the case of what do I do about the consumer? And so you're seeing an incredible amount of additional regulation that will come into effect during at least next year, and then the following years there's a lot more regulation coming. And I think that it's going to be a big challenge for travel for us to be able to live in this new world.
Okay, interesting. Should we worry about, things like ability to consumer spending?
I think we're going to be seeing some changes in the dynamics of spending. What happens when there is disruption or uncertainty is people delay travel decisions. They also change some of the places that they'd like to go to. So they'd like to go to places that are familiar. And you already have a lot of situations of dissonance from different groups of people. I won't go near this place. I won't go to that place. And I'll tell you for now, and for Europe, Europeans are not willing necessarily to come to the States because of the uncertainty of what the new administration is going to do. So that is going to be a bit of a drain. And also the other way, because the UK, Lord help us, is putting up these new restrictions. So you've got the ETA coming in January.
Interesting. Do you agree? You looked a little skeptical there.
Well, I don't know about, skeptical in the sense of, I think it's just hard to predict exactly how this is going to shake out.
That's what I mean about the uncertainty that goes with it.
Right. But I do appreciate the point where people see uncertainty or maybe aren't as attracted to the States because of the current dynamics. You could see people shifting where they go. But I don't see a shift in the spend or the desire to go away. If you all remember, even right after September 11th, everybody was like, travel's dead. But the reality is, everybody wants to go away on vacation at some point.
You put your hand up when that came up on the launch people. The lady from Moby came out and says, who's going to travel next year? And your hand went straight up.
Absolutely.
Great. Cause for optimism, Lorraine.
I think, you want me to be the optimist?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I was just going to say, I think the height of demand is over.
Yeah.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
So that, we talk about normalization, but we are seeing, of course, a lot more luxury travel, right? So is that a good thing or a bad thing? So there's a little concern about, the other 80% and, are they going to be able to afford to travel? Yeah. So I think we're still going to see high prices, and that's going to delay or some of that growth that we'd like to see in kind of the, mid-range traveler. But for luxury travel, for cruise lines, they're having the time of their lives, which, I thought they were dead in the water after COVID, and all of a sudden everybody's taking, or these complex trips. Multi-generational trips are still really big. Yeah. Safaris are big. So this high-end complex travel seems to be having its day. But I don't know exactly what's going to happen to, some other types of travel segments.
I think one of the things that does happen, and the US is kind of weird like this, it doesn't really acknowledge family-type travel. It doesn't understand VFR. It's not something that people identify and bring out. And I agree, that's the least dynamic part of the travel world ever. So people will always take the trip to see grandma, the trip to see the kids, whatever it might be. But I think you're right that one of the things that is going to occur is there is going to be a dropout of some particular types of travel, but that will probably manifest itself firstly in delayed decision making. But I think one of the other areas we're going to see a drop is going to be in business travel. I think business travel will take a hit next year with this uncertainty.
So you do, because business travel still is not completely back to where it was. So you're saying it's actually going to take a step back.
I think it's going to also take it back, because what I think has happened is people have got used to the new normal. In one of the sessions around tables we had, there was somebody there from Microsoft who said they may have cut back too much, but they're not going to increase it. which is really interesting.
Yeah.
So then when GBTA or Marriott in its recent results or whatever to come out and say, it's still strong, it's continuing into, group business, for example, still strong, continuing into the new year, is that just kind of hot air?
I think it's a bit, because you actually have to look at the number of people who are traveling rather than the spend. If we start to look at the number rather than the spend, what we're going to see is that the number is actually falling because the spend is so high. What you're also seeing is some interesting trends that as when you have a tightening set of budgets, you also see surprisingly an increase of people evading the normal corporate policy. That was another topic that came out where people said, wait a minute, what are we seeing in terms of the people who are exceptioning themselves out of policy in order to achieve their business goals? So I think you're going to see a fair amount of that occurring, and it's not going to recover to the same level that we had pre-2019.
Right. That's what I'm going to say. Year over year, there's growth for sure, but still not over 2019.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. I'm a little tired of hearing about AI, and maybe that's just because I'm sort of so immersed in it over a few days. Is that kind of fatigue? I mean, first of all, is that fair, Aaron? And is that kind of fatigue going to sort of seep in generally?
Yeah, I think we're all a little fatigued by it. The thing I'm fatigued by is that I think people aren't really talking about the metrics that actually matter. The only thing that AI really does at the end of the day, from a discovery point of view or the front end point of view, is turn into conversion, right? And conversion means I bought something, right? So if it helps you get a better answer and you buy it, then you should see conversion rates going up. No one's talking about conversion
we're a
rates,
long
right?
way
Zero,
from that, yeah.
right? And so that's where the rubber hits the road, is when you actually see the conversion numbers going up. I do think there are, and everybody's talking about this, using it in the back ends to help take out costs. And I think we'll see more of that. In particular, I think the business travel segment is going to benefit the most because that's the highest touch product, right? So if you think about the kind of call centers that Amex GBT has to maintain and all those questions that come in, I think they're the kind of outfits that are actually going to use AI, at least on the cost side, and will actually get some real benefits out of it. But I've yet to see it on the conversion side in the front end.
I was going to say, does anybody do research anymore? Because I haven't heard anybody say, this is what our customer wants.
Yeah.
Do we know that the customer really wants voice booking?
Do we know that they actually know what it is that they're seeing, using, doing?
I haven't heard a thing about it. It's coming from the top down.
There are some people saying it, but it's coming from the inside and it's staying inside is really what's happening. But what was interesting is in the panel with the lady from American Express, she was actually claiming, oh no, we just talked to our employees because they're hearing all these terrible things that AI is going to take away their jobs.
She said specifically.
Yes, in Europe it is a bit of an issue. But heck, of course that's going to happen. I mean, that's a little bit of, wishful thinking to say it's not going to happen. Of course it's going to happen.
But like timescale, 5 years? I mean...
I think you're already seeing it because you look at those manual processes which are done, I would say, a security blanket, where you're seeing operational issues, and I'll get into the issue of tech debt in a minute, but operations is actually often done to make up for the tech debt that didn't get solved. People throw people at the problem to solve it.
That's interesting.
So it's really peculiar. Can I talk about tech debt now? Is that all right?
Go on, why not?
Okay, all right.
Nice.
You're already
there.
We're already there. We've crossed
We're
to the dark side.
We're still listening. Come on.
Oh, there we go. So the problem we have today is we have a large amount of tech debt. But what is looming is a huge amount of tech deficit. And that is where we're going to have to pay for stuff to integrate and actually make AI useful. And that money, it's got to come from somewhere. Where's it going to come from? So there's got to be some ROI, and I think people are still struggling with it. I hate the word artificial intelligence, and I think everybody should stop using the word artificial. They should be using assisted or augmented intelligence, because that's more of what's going on. But when you go back to look at tech debt, I'll keep on saying this until I die probably, that so many people in the travel industry, because they are walled garden siloed players, is they're just focused on building faster horses. They really need to go and think about some of these processes. And as we're going through this generational change that AI can bring to the marketplace, they need to go back and revisit some of those things. What do you think, Lorraine? I mean, you've been observing this for as long as I have, right?
So what do I think? Well, first of all, I thought it was interesting. Who was it that said, "Oh, only we want to be the Amazon of travel, but only Amazon has $40 billion to spend on technology."
Right,
so
Dessia said that.
I do think about that, but I just think it was a lot of fun talking to a lot of startups here and a lot of entrepreneurs who I had like someone say, I'm starting a tech company. I know nothing about technology because I don't need to anymore. And I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
So I just hire somebody, figure it out, do an API to chat GPT, and I'm done.
Open platform, whatever.
And then she's starting to curate, right? And starting to think about, well, what are the certain things I could do, like that we're still missing, whether or not it's local events or whether or not experiences, and starting to get some of those ideas. So even though we have this AI fatigue, and yes, I agree with you that a lot of travel companies just don't have the tech dollars to implement a lot of this vision yet. I do like that we do have these fresh ideas that I think we're going to start seeing some new and interesting products.
But, I mean, you see it all. You see all of the emerging tech. You're talking to people about it all the time. And I was speaking to Ethan at Klook the other day, and he was just saying that there's nothing transformative in travel, that it comes from outside and then permeates. Would you agree? Is there anything transformative in travel?
I have to say that travel industry, when we looked at that yearbook that I wrote in 1998, if we publish that today, except for some of the numbers, it's not 3% anymore. The online penetration is now 60%. Except for that, the rest of it, I mean, some of the market leaders, there was a lot of consolidation, but still we had some market leaders that are still here today. And all the friction and, it's still, and everything is still getting booked the same way, right? We talked about that earlier. Distribution hasn't really changed. So the top of the funnel is going bananas. Right. And the bottom of the funnel is kind of status quo.
Yeah. So then, all this talk that we've had over the last couple of days, and maybe that's part of the fatigue about disintermediation, GDS and TMC. If you wrote that same yearbook now, it would
be the same.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. It's the same conversations.
Yeah.
But I think what has happened and is different is the actual share of direct versus indirect. That has definitely changed.
Yes.
And the consequence of that is that the players who were strong intermediaries, like the GDSs, have seen their influence decline. Mm-hmm. And that's why you're seeing probably a lot more fragmentation. I think this is that's one of the trends I've seen. And when you're looking at the high cost to do things, and the incumbents are still effectively charging large numbers in order to become part of that, you can shift the deck chairs on the Titanic, but you still have to make the investment. I think it's harder for people because what's happening is now, and I'm hearing this from a lot of people, is that the loss of expertise of how the structures were originally built means that people don't know how to deconstruct it and reconstruct it.
That's interesting.
Right? So that's why people are still focused on building faster horses. So, and I'm saying, look, we have an opportunity here. We're at a generational change. This is what gets me really excited, because we're looking at this generational change only if we're going to change the processes that power some of these really silly technology things we have in place today.
But you are talking a lot about the customer experience, and that we really are failing consumers.
Yes.
But Aaron, do we actually care as an industry? I sometimes think that we just go on about our internal processes so much and pay lip service to the customer experience.
Yeah, it depends on where you are in the process. I might be jumping around a little bit, but if you look at a company like World Travel Holdings, right, does the big cruise business.
Yeah.
They credit a lot of their success, rightfully, I think, to the fact that they like people talking to their agents.
Yeah.
That touch creates repeat. It creates satisfaction.
And must create ancillary sales.
100%, right?
Yeah.
And there are other companies who say, no, we're just trying to get it so that everything's untouched. It's all electronic. We never talk to anybody. But then there are no switching costs, right? There's no loyalty. You have no ability to upsell. And I think that the reason Jeff Tolkien's got such a good business is because they actually think about that customer experience and the touch, and they want you to actually talk to their agents. Now, do they want to use AI to make it better and easier for their agent to operate? Sure. And if they can make his agents, go from selling $1 million to selling $1.5 million each, great. But that will enhance everybody's experience. But I do think we've all lost track of that, and this idea that everything's untouched.
Oh, are we thinking about the technology in the wrong way then?
we're thinking about the technology in the wrong way. I don't think we're thinking about the technology in the wrong way. I mean, we are talking about augmenting, right? Exactly to Timothy's point, right? It's
intelligence,
about augmenting the agent's ability, augmenting the service ability. I think those are all really, really good things. But the idea that it's this panacea that'll create untouched travel, that doesn't excite me at all.
I'll differ with you on one particular piece, and I think it's a question of the consumer. What is the consumer? So, I'm a boomer, God help me, and as a boomer, I liked certain things done a certain way. What you see now with the generational change is now Gen Z becomes the largest group of travelers. You are seeing a shift in behavior. Like, who is the number one travel influencer? Taylor Swift. Talk to United, talk to the hotels, talk to Singapore. Look at what happened with the Eras tour. That in of itself is a huge business, and what did it do to travel? It was massive, right? So I think that what you're seeing there is in travel, we have allowed to persist too much friction. There's too much friction between getting to the nice stuff, right? So the guys at Travelport, I'll give them a quick plug, Mark Lenehan and his team, they have actually done a video which talks to people about how do you like the travel purchasing experience. Everybody loves the ideation business. That's great. The endorphins go and we're all really excited. Right. But when it comes to the actual process of once you're in the funnel, it's horrid. It is fundamentally horrid.
But we actually shouldn't even be talking about the travel purchasing experience. We should be just talking about booking a trip.
Exactly. And I think that this is where I do believe that we have a responsibility. Right now, I think if you, in the offer process, it's kind of okay. The order process is terrible. Right? So then you look at those and you ask, well, what are we doing? And all you hear, like in NDC and OOSSD, because I always add the service component, is it's so internally focused. It's not doing anything for the customer. There was a conversation on LinkedIn where people were saying, isn't it great that we can create 5 million fares and how we have to manage 5 million fares? I'm going, that's terrible. Why do we need to create 5 million fares for 8 million passengers? It's stupid.
All right, then what should the airline industry's New Year resolution be?
Be nice to your customers. Start there.
Okay.
I think that the airlines have really lost their way because it's such a supply-side dominated market. I think they've not done a good job really in thinking about the customer experience, which was refreshing to hear Neilman when he was talking about that. He did a really good job in saying, I want to be nice to my customers. Yeah. And you think, good Lord, I show you a picture of my ride down on a particular large Big Four carrier with the broken seat. And what did they give me? 2,500 miles. Whoop-de-doo.
Yeah, what you going to do? There's ground transportation, rail. What should be the New Year resolution there?
Well, one of the things, if we just stay on the AI angle and as it hits ground transportation, there are a couple of places where this is actually having an impact. And I can only really talk about my own little world, but in the rail space, because we get, rail's super high frequency, so you get a lot of data. Data is what allows you to use AI, right? So it's actually a perfect environment. As a side note, I think people like Uber will do a killer job here because there's just so much data in their world. But in a market like the UK, where we power the majority of the rail search in the market, and we're seeing 4 billion journeys planned in a year, we've been able to use machine learning to look at the patterns and actually construct new routes of travel from get to A to B and actually knock down some of the pricing. That's a great tangible benefit to the consumer when you can figure out how to get them a better price, right? So we invented a product called split ticketing, which would allow you, instead of going here to here, break it.
And it actually works.
And we can knock the prices down about 30% on the top 40 O&D routes in the UK, which we follow every Monday. The pricing, we're averaging about 30% less. That's a good real value for that.
Lorraine, start with you. What is the potential for a really big M&A deal in travel next year? I mean, we've had the rumors floated.
We've had to have the rumors. We've had the rumors. We haven't seen a big blockbuster M&A deal in a really long time. And I think that some of these companies are just so big and they're so fat, that it's just...
The TripAdvisor committee is still convening?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah?
They are.
Got an impression? Don't stand there smiling.
Oh, I think there's, there's a couple of sectors I think we'll absolutely see some consolidation. It may not be at the mega side, but I do think the world of those ancillary products that happen in vacation destinations, what Make My Trip does, and tickets and all of that stuff, I think that is ripe for consolidation. I do think the bigger players are looking at that space and saying, how do they want to fit these kinds of products into their whole suite? So I think there's sectors that will be that way. And there's a question of like, is there going to be a big mega deal? And, I wrote that article talking about, Uber and Expedia, because both the CEOs are good friends. But you can argue both sides of the coin on that one. On the one hand, I actually think you could make that deal work. I think actually it would be really smart of Barry Diller to do that deal. Barry's in his 80s. At some point in time, he's going to want to liquidate this investment. He doesn't want to be the chairman when he's 95 years old. So what can you do? He owns the majority of the shares. If he sold one share today, he impacts that price. If he does a stock deal with an Uber, he takes his 25% premium, and when he's done with that, he owns less than 1% of it. He could sell all those shares in 2 days, and the stock wouldn't even blink.
Do you think that conversation actually happened? Do you think that phone call was made? I know you don't, but I'm just asking for speculation.
Look, of course that conversation's happened in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Dara's on the board.
The what if?
He's friends with all of these people. Of course, Dara's thought about every potential sector in the world. Of course, they talked about this as one of them. It absolutely happened, but it's not the only thing they're talking about. He's exploring every single thing out there, and this would obviously be on the list. But if anybody could pull it off, of course he could, because he knows the business model. Expedia's just rolled out this brand new technical platform.
Great people.
That's going to do really well.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of positives. On the other hand, does Dara want to go spending a lot of money on that big of an acquisition? When in fact, I think he could build Uber Travel organically, add hotels. It's not that hard to build a hotel business, right? And he could step his way into this. But I think the brand, Uber Travel, would be an awesome brand at some point in time.
Have you got shares in Uber?
I still have some old shit. But I think there's another factor at play here. If you look at who was the darling and the darlings who existed with that overinflated stock price, they've had a comeuppance. Look at Airbnb's stock, right? Look at the relationship. Okay, look at the relationship of Booking stock. Booking stock is through the roof at the moment, right? They have the cash to do this.
Yes.
That's an interesting proposition to say who could be an instigator of this, because I'm kind of the opinion that what's going to happen.
Skeptical.
I've
got a blockbuster deals.
Well, here's what I think is
I think everybody's just too big right now.
Yeah,
you're right, and it's too big to fail, right? So there's a little bit of that going on. But here's what I do think could happen. I think there's a chain reaction that would happen with a number of smaller deals. So when you look at what's going on in Asia, for example, you look at Klook, you mentioned Klook as an example. You look at some of the companies in India who are growing and are now reached a certain size. I think you could see some of them crossing the boundaries.
Yeah, coming for the lunch.
Yes.
And you look at the depressed stock of certain players in Europe.
Maybe a hop or two.
Yes, I would say that there's places where this could go. So I'm of the opinion, not a blockbuster, not a Class A, but I think a lot of Class B could happen. Okay. So that's kind of my opinion.
Because they're going to adjust, get back to reality and adjust.
I think so. Well, you've seen that with Airbnb stock. I mean, that's a good example. And also, you look at Grubhub. Look what happened to them when they just sold. And look what they were, 16 billion, and they sold for 300 million in the end, or whatever the number was. But it was a significant.
Hang on. What was the price of Get there when it was sold to Sabre, and what did you sell it to Sabre?
Oh, that was that.
We all know that number off by heart because it's like an airplane. It was 757 million. We know the number, and it was sold for 12.
Yeah.
You go, oh, come on, guys.
Yeah.
All right. As we wrap up, if you could gift one thing to the travel industry, what would it be?
That's a good question.
Dang.
Come on now.
Can I say something really?
Yeah.
Selfish in a selfish way. I would love to give the travel industry some good ideas and to help them, just make decisions and how to do that, through research and to talking to people, understanding people, and just helping a lot of these young companies make decisions. So I think just give back a little bit.
Nice,
I think I'm kind of at that point in my career.
I like that.
I need to give back, right? A little something.
Aaron.
The one sector I really do like where the technology is going are with these boutique hotels.
Yeah.
I love boutique hotels, but they often know nothing about the customers, and there's really poor purchasing experiences that happen around them. I do like the AI and the service where they're able to adopt technology, get demand directly. I love boutique hotels. They're rarely profitable. You know, they got to pay a big tax to get customers. I'd love to see these guys get more direct business, be able to give better service at that level. I think that will continue for them. So
you'd give them that now?
Yes, I would give them that now. I love that sector. I'd love to see it do well.
Tim, what's the Christmas present?
Kindness. Because, but I'm going to put some qualification around that, because I think the issue of service has been so pushed into the back. In the airline world, we're so obsessed with, how we're going to fix offer and order. Where's the service in that? It's not even in the name. So I think service and kindness and understanding what you can do for the customer, to me, that is a gift I would wish on everybody inside the whole stack.
Erin, Lorraine, Timothy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was fun.